Hi, I'm Skinny Cheeks. It's that time again. The week 1 PTS patch notes are here. This video will be a more condensed summary of a section of the changes, focusing in on the item sets, and I'll give a little bit of my feedback on them. If you do want to watch the full 3+ hour patch note review, which is essentially more of my initial reactions to each of the changes, that is available here on YouTube as well. Just beware, it is the full unedited video from the live stream. But let's go ahead and jump into the new sets here. We'll start off with the Overland sets. First, we have the light set. This one is Vivek's Duality. After staying on 1 bar for 15 seconds, gain 6636 magicka and stamina when bar swapping. So not really something that I'll probably be using, but maybe someone out there, this sounds kind of interesting for you. Next up, we have the heavy set Adamant Lurker. The 5-piece on this one is 1505 health recovery while you're standing still. So again, not one I'm really too interested in. It is a lot of health recovery, but not something I'll want to give up another 5-piece bonus for. So not really too interested in either of the first two, but the medium armor one does look kind of interesting. Kamanatong. It has all weapon and spell damage for the 2 to 4-piece bonuses. And then for the 5-piece, on gaining kill XP from a monster, gain 1 weapon and spell damage for every 50 XP the monster is worth for 30 seconds. This bonus can stack up to a maximum of 540 weapon and spell damage. And then this item set is not affected by XP boosting effects. So just naturally what the enemy should be worth for XP before any kind of bonuses there. So this is a pretty nice 5-piece bonus, 540 if you can actually get up to that. That's pretty high. And with that long 30-second timer, it should be fairly easy to keep up in a lot of different types of content, but obviously it won't be useful everywhere. You don't really get a ton of XP in trials, but I think at least people will probably enjoy this as a set to grind in, and encounters that do have a lot of enemies where you can take advantage of this bonus, I could see it being pretty good. So I'll be looking out to see if someone puts out like a chart of like, okay, this set's really good here because there's a lot of XP or whatnot. Yeah, I'm sure somebody's going to come up with that. So 1 out of 3 for me for the Overland sets, but for the craftable sets, I actually really like all 3 of these. I don't personally see them as sets targeted at my playstyle in particular, but I can see the merit in them nonetheless. So this first one here is called Shattered Fate. The 5-piece bonus is 7918 offensive penetration. The 10-piece bonus is 687 weapon and spell damage, and then the 12-piece bonus is 1528 crit chance. So essentially that first 5-piece, if you were comparing it to a normal set and what the bonuses would look like, it would be like having 3 lines of penetration followed by a 5-piece that is similar to something like Spriggans or Spinners. Seems like a pretty solid block of stats. And then for the 6 through 10 piece, it would be like having 129 weapon and spell damage for those 2 to 4-piece bonuses, and then the 5-piece bonus as 300 weapon and spell damage. And then for the 12-piece bonus, it's slightly better than what you'd get from slotting a couple of crit chance monster set pieces. So nothing that really blows you away here compared to what we can get from some other sets, although the nothing but pin 5-piece bonus might be attractive to some for PvP. But I think really what this set does is allow a super easy way to set up a character with almost no planning or thinking involved. You just make every single piece that you can wear a piece of this set, and you have more than serviceable stats to tackle content with. I see this as being a perfect option for those that just hit CP 160 and want to start collecting their gear. They can ask a guildmate to craft them a set of this, and they're good to go with good stats for a while. Or for a more experienced player, you just want something you can throw onto one of your alts. You don't want to overthink it, maybe just something to do some daily randoms with or whatever. This is a quick and easy way to set up a character and have really good stats. Personally, I think this is a pretty cool idea overall for a set. Alright, the next crafted set will be Telvanni Efficiency. Don't love the 2 to 4-piece bonuses here. I always dread seeing that trifecta of resources. But for that 5-piece bonus, I do think a lot of players will have fun with this one. While you have a living companion, reduce the cooldown of their abilities by 50%, while you do not reduce the cost of your magicka, stamina, health, and ultimate abilities by 8%. So personally, I'm not super into the companion system, though I do like to bring Miri along for some stuff, but I know a lot of players are really into it, and I think they will have fun with a set like this. Just having a way now to boost up the power of that companion by quite a bit. It's just kind of a fun new little thing they can do. And then the other bonus on there too, all the cost reduction, it's not awful. It's not something I'm really going to use a 5-piece bonus for personally, but you know, it's not wasted if the companion dies. And then finally for the crafted sets, we have Seeker Synthesis. Again, the resources on the 2 to 4 piece, that's not the most appealing, but the 5 piece is when you cast an ability that costs resources while in combat, you reduce your potion cooldown by 0.6 seconds. This can occur once every 0.6 seconds. So this seems pretty niche, but I think there are definitely some playstyles out there that could benefit from this. Some potion effects are pretty short, and combined with the potion cooldown glyphs, you could probably get some pretty nutty uptimes on some of the effects that you normally only have up for a very short duration. So yeah, like I said before, I think all 3 of the crafted sets are pretty cool. None that I feel like are specifically targeted towards my playstyle, but I still think they're pretty neat. Moving on to the trial sets. First up, we have Peace and Serenity. This is a light armor set. We get crit chance, minor slayer, weapon and spell damage, and then the perfected version also has another line of weapon and spell damage. And then for the 5-piece bonus, while you're standing still, you gain 465 weapon and spell damage. While you're moving, you gain 203 health, magicka, and stamina recovery. So this one seems to fit in with the theme of what they've been doing lately and just trying not to put out stuff that is blatantly overpowered, but instead fills a niche. The trigger condition for this is super easy as long as it is a fight that allows for standing still. So I think some people really enjoy sets where they don't have to think too hard about the bonus on the 5-piece. It's just kind of there, that set and forget kind of set. I think it could definitely work well on a number of encounters in the game. But obviously there are plenty of other encounters where you just wouldn't want to wear this at all because you have to move around too much. All right, the next is the medium armor set, Ansul's Torment. It gives crit chance, minor slayer, penetration, crit chance, and then the 5-piece is increases your damage done against monsters by 7%. When you interrupt an enemy, you increase your damage done against monsters by an additional 7% for 10 seconds. The base percent damage done bonus on this is actually pretty good. It's equivalent to using it besides Mania with about 41% magicka remaining. So definitely not bad as just another set and forget kind of set. That second portion though, it's kind of weird. It could definitely be really strong for some niche encounters, but it does feel kind of strange for a DPS set that's sourced from a trial to have an interrupt condition on it like that. It's just kind of awkward since in most trials you don't have a ton of interrupts going off, and even if you do, you're competing with 11 other people as to who actually gets that interrupt. Like in the new trial, there's a bunch of interrupts that need to happen on boss 1, but even then they're very inconsistent. There's not enough for everyone to get an interrupt. It's not enough to really like carry that second half of the set. So I don't know. I don't necessarily dislike the set. Like I said, the flat bonus with no conditions, still pretty solid, but I don't know. Seems like a condition that would make more sense on a set that drops in a solo arena or a 4-man dungeon even, or a crafted set, but who knows? We'll see what happens with it. Next up is Transformative Hope. This is a light armor set. The 5-piece bonus is while in combat, when you heal yourself or an ally that is below 40% health, you ignite a spark of hope within them for 3 seconds. If they are above 90% health when the effect ends, you and the ally gain major heroism for 15 seconds. This effect can occur once every 20 seconds per target. So major heroism is really good. However, the condition to get this here is actually pretty scuffed on this one. If this was a PvP sourced type of set, I'd say, okay, whatever. But as a trial set, usually your supports want to run sets that you'll be able to consistently buff people with. And this is one of those that would be very inconsistent unless you were doing some really awkward stuff in order to proc it. So I could see some really sweaty high-end groups doing some strange things to risk it for the biscuit, so to speak. But I don't know. This one feels like one of those that might end up being a PvP set, which again is fine, but why is it being sourced from the new trial? Another pain point on this is when the effect ends after the 3 seconds, they have to be above 90% health. I think you should just get the major heroism as soon as you get above 90% health, even if it's before that 3-second period, because this is kind of weird. Like you might heal them up, you might get them up to 100% health, but then they take a hit right as that timer is expiring and maybe they go to 85% health and then you don't get the buff on them. So it's kind of one of those weird conditions there, and I think it would be a lot more straightforward if you just had to heal them up to 90% health and then bam, you got your buff. And then finally for the trial sets, we have Test of Resolve. This is a heavy armor set, and the 5-piece bonus is when you take damage while under 35% health, your resolve is tested. If you're also below 50% stamina, you restore all your resources while also gaining major protection and major aegis for 10 seconds. If you're above 50% stamina, you become a beacon of hope for 20 seconds, causing your major and minor buffs to also grant major aegis for 10 seconds. This effect can occur once every 1 minute. So this is this is a mouthful here. Really long cooldown here though, which means as a buff set option, if you're using it to try to buff allies, it's not going to be very reliable at all. And then even as a selfish set option, if you're just really going full survival as a tank, the condition for yourself is not bad, but again, it's only once every minute. In this current state, I just don't see this one being very popular at all for tanking. And I also feel like there's just too much on it. Like there are too many weird conditions and different aspects to it. Like maybe just simplify this one a little bit more, make it a little bit more straightforward. All right, on to the Mythics. I think all three of these are pretty dang good this time around. So first up, we have the Heavy Legs Esoteric Environment Greaves. While you're above 33% stamina, reduce your damage taken by 50% and lose 1567 stamina whenever you take direct damage up to once every 0.5 seconds. So these are going to make the wearer really tanky. However, that stamina drain is going to be pretty brutal, especially combined with that stamina loss that you'll already have from blocking. I could see these being used as a way to not have to block some of the attacks in the game. For example, some enemies have light attacks that are strong enough to kill or almost kill tanks if they aren't blocking. Maybe you could get away with not blocking those while you are wearing this and reserve your blocking for the really heavy hits. And that way you're not double draining your stamina all the time. I do think this is going to help with some of that damage over time stuff that's been wrecking tanks in the latest hard modes. You can't block damage over time abilities, but this mythic will reduce that damage. So this is going to take a lot of pressure off for some of those really hard hitting encounters in the game. And you'll just have to make sure that you do account for your stamina drain though, because it's going to be getting wrecked with this. Getting in heavy attacks wherever possible and tweaking your build so that it isn't too much strain on you. But it does have that condition where it turns off at 33% stamina remaining. So if you do get too low, this won't keep draining your stam and get you killed, though you will have to change your playstyle up a little in that scenario, as you won't be getting that 50% reduced damage taken either. So you'll have to make sure that you are a bit more careful. I really do like the idea behind this though. I think it's going to be one of those things that can really help some groups get that push that they need to tackle some of the harder content in the game. Next up, we have a light chest piece. This is Crypt Cannon Vestments. You can no longer cast ultimate abilities. Instead, casting an ultimate ability transfers your ultimate resource to your living group members, divided equally among them. Gain minor heroism at all times. So this one seems really interesting as well. Having someone spec'd into ult generation and just feeding ult to their allies. I see this one working especially well in smaller groups where that divided ultimate will be far more noticeable. Say you're in a group of 3 and the person wearing this has 500 ult, that's 250 ult to each of the other 2 teammates. So they could drop a Destro ult, each one of them could drop one, and then immediately drop another one. So you get 4 Destro ults from only 3 people essentially. So what you're doing is, since you normally as a player casting an ultimate, you can't benefit from going past your ultimate cost. All that extra ult just ends up wasted. But with this, since it divvies it out, it doesn't get wasted. So if you had 500 ult, all 500 of that ult gets to be used. It does take a bit of coordination, but I can see some people coming up with some really fun stuff with this mythic. They did make a note that you can't proc sets that rely on casting an ultimate for this one. So like something like Pillager's Prophet or Balorg. So this is something to consider when you are building around it. Then finally, the DPS mythic we are getting is Velothi Urmage's Amulet. This adds 4968 offensive penetration, increases your damage done to monsters by 15%, increases your crit damage by 15%, and then it reduces your light and heavy attack damage by 99%. So like the heavy legs, I really like what this adds to the game. I think this is probably Zos's answer to the heavy attack builds out there being the kind of one accessibility route to getting into harder content. And now now for those that do enjoy the more traditional light attack builds, you have something that's going to add a bit of forgiveness for not weaving perfectly while offering some really great stats at the same time. The penetration and crit damage are both capped stats, and it seems like they specifically chose those to make this mythic have less of an impact on the highest end gameplay, since those groups would already have those stats accounted for. And that lines up with the trial dummy as well. You're generally not going to get a huge amount from this using it on the trial dummy unless your weaving was not very good, as you are often capped on your penetration and crit damage there already. So then your only benefit is the 15% damage boost, which is really nice still, but you do have to subtract your light attack damage off, which is going to make that not a huge gain. And you also have to consider the opportunity cost of whatever other mythic you're giving up to run this instead. So for most classes on the trial dummy or in super optimized scenarios, this really isn't going to be worth it. Now there is an exception with the Arcanist because they have the really long beam that's over 4 seconds on one morph and over 5 on the other. You're already missing so many light attacks anyway because you're stuck in the beam animation. So even on the dummy, this mythic is looking pretty good for the Arcanist. But where this thing really shines is in less optimized scenarios. That's where it's going to be really strong. Also AoE trash encounters, since your light attacks don't matter nearly as much there anyways. So I do see this being a really nice option there too. Overall, I really like this mythic a lot, and I don't want people to misunderstand it. It doesn't tell you to not light attack weave. You still want to do that if you want to get the optimal gains out of it, since your light attacks do trigger your ult generation, as well as your enchantments on your weapons, which generally proc very nice damage over time status effects. But it does give you some wiggle room to not weave as well, and it makes up a lot of the stats you'd miss out on in less optimized environments. I know some have complained a little bit about this, but I really like what this does for the game personally. One of the biggest reasons people get frustrated and quit the game is when we have a patch that disrupts the progression of whatever you're working on. There is nothing more annoying than spending weeks or months working on a piece of content only to have things change up on you, and then you have to take a step back and some of that progress is lost, and it just feels so deflating. It's no fault of your own, and I felt like a set like that really helps to do the opposite. You know, we can go into a patch with a bit of encouragement to those that are struggling to make that next push, whether it be finally completing that trial on veteran mode or vet hard mode, getting the speed run down to make the trifecta run. Really doesn't matter which tier of content that you're currently progressing. It's nice to have something that can offer a little boost for those groups that are not 100% fully optimized. And with the way they've been designing trial content the last couple of years with Rockgrove and Dreadsail, it put groups in a really weird position. Some groups that could do the hard modes before, they're unable to knock these out. Other groups that could do all the trial trifectas before, well, same boat here. Maybe they're just progging the hard mode instead for 6 months or 8 months or a year or whatever. And I know for many that has been super deflating to have a section of content that you were able to participate in within the game all of a sudden jacked up to a higher level, and now you can't realistically participate in that same subset of content anymore. So sets like this and the tank mythic, these are big wins in my eyes to help teams get a little bit more of a push. This definitely feels like they're tackling a similar problem that they did with the Oaken Soul heavy attack stuff, except this aimed for a little bit different target audience in the game. But that's going to do it for the new sets. We did have some pre-existing sets that have been changed though. We have Frenzied Momentum and Spectral Cloak. These sets will now only apply their effects if you cast their respective ability requirements while in combat. So this is going to be pretty annoying. These changes were made because of the exploit where you can pre-buff the relative skills that go with these before combat. So with Spectral Cloak, for example, that would be Deadly Cloak or Quick Cloak. And if you have this set equipped, you can then change to a different set and you'd still benefit from the bonuses for that 30-second duration. So some really sweaty DPS will get a nice little bump to their opening DPS for the fights by hot swapping this off of their bar. And now because of that, everyone has to interact with these sets in a more awkward way now. I'm not necessarily blaming those players that did it. I think really what I'm saying is this isn't a good solution to that issue. So whenever I'm running into a fight, I always cast Deadly Cloak on my way in before I get get there because it's a dot that sticks on me. It just makes sense. It's the efficient way to do it. You cast it beforehand because it works well that way, and you don't have to waste a GCD while you're actually in combat to cast it. Well, now you do have to waste that in combat GCD. Otherwise, it will not trigger the bonus for the Black Rose Prison dual wield. So it's not the end of the world. It's one of those weird little things now that you're just going to have to remember. Make sure that you are in combat when you do first hit this skill. If that in combat condition is not triggered, then this bonus on the set will not trigger. It's really kind of silly in my opinion. I get pretty frustrated at a lot of these changes that hurt everyday use of sets and whatnot because of some bugs in the game that were being exploited. I think generally there are better solutions to come to for stuff like this. And if not, if you can't find a better solution, let the 60 people or so that are doing this in the game get a tiny bit more DPS from it, whatever. I would rather have that and not have the set changed. But anyways, we'll go ahead and move on. The next set up is Stormmaster. This set's bonus damage with light and heavy attacks now only works against monsters. Reduce the duration of the bonus to 8 seconds down from 20. Reduce the cooldown to 5 seconds down from 10. So this is a very popular heavy attack set right now, and I think it'll still be very good. The uptime will be a little bit less reliable now, so we'll probably see some other sets step in a bit for various scenarios to be paired with Sergeant's Mail, but I definitely think on certain fights you'll still see this set going. And then next up we have Nunatak. This set now applies a 40% snare to enemies hit rather than a stacking snare from 25 to 100. Major Brittle now applies on enemies that have been damaged 4 or more times by this set rather than only on the 4th hit. And then fixed an issue where the snare from this set could stack with other snares and could cause enemies to become unable to move. So I don't really have much to comment on this one. I haven't really been using this set. It sounds like more of a PvP targeted thing. Then we have Ozezon's Inferno. Fixed an issue where this set's armor could fail to reduce damage against procs, fixed an issue where this set could proc off procs, and fixed an issue where this set's armor did not appear in the character sheet despite being active. So a lot of bugs here with this one that they have fixed just to make sure the set is operating under the rule set that we would expect it to. And then finally, the change to Plague Break. This set will now only attempt to apply itself to enemy players rather than any enemy. Note, the explosion can still damage and be amplified by nearby non-players. The developer comment on this says, this change was made to correct a behavior we've been seeing in PvP areas where you could apply this set to entities such as pets or guards that lacked critical knowledge of how to counterplay the mechanics introduced. This also hits some truly creative uses of this set in PvE, where we have seen some humorous videos that wipe out entire dungeons with relative ease, which, while we appreciated the ingenuity, it was slightly overperforming. And I will agree with them that there were uses of this set that were broken, but I really don't like their solution here of let's just turn it off for PvE altogether. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier with the Black Rose Prison dual wield set. Because some people found creative ways to do some really nutty stuff with Plague Break, people that were just using it in a more intended manner also get punished. It just really sucks. This was, in my opinion, the most satisfying set to use in the game. The feeling of going into a pack of enemies, having your tank do a great job of gathering them all in a nice tight stack, and then blowing them up with Plague Break, just about the coolest thing in the game combat-wise. And I feel like there are other solutions here that could resolve the issues with the set that don't involve just turning it off against PvE enemies. So I hope they rethink this one, or we can at least get maybe a PvE equivalent of this set at some point, maybe with a target cap so that crazy stack everything in the whole dungeon up. Those types of uses aren't as effective, but still in a place where the damage can scale up high enough with large group of enemies to give that really satisfying Plague Break sort of feel. But as it is now, let us all gather to mourn Plague Break for PvE use. This is a sad day for those that enjoyed this set. And that's going to do it for this video. Apologies for ending this on a negative note. There are definitely a lot of good things to look forward to with gear in ESO for update 38. But I hope that Zos can address some of the feedback here with some of these sets that don't feel so great, both the new ones and the sets that were changed. But let me know what you all think. You can leave a comment here or join the discussion in the Discord. That will be linked in the description below. I want to give a shout out to my Patreon and YouTube members. The contributions help so much to keep the website and the YouTube channel going. And then a special thanks to Nicholas, Simon, Cougar's Bay and the Cougar City Guild, the Order of War Guild, Cantankerous Cat, Shady, Iffy, Blake1816, Mordecai1212, Santanico, Vidridi, Florian, Phoenix, Nalandia, Unemployed, Cresceliana, Cha-Cha, and Technical KO. Thanks again and see you later. Bye.